So initially I'm going to do an overview of the dose response module. It's easier to explain if we see the finished analysis. Then we'll talk about module setup, analysis of commented data, and comment conversion. So that takes us to the end here of my presentation, or actually I should say my PowerPoint, and now we'll actually get into LabChart. So what I have here is a pre-analyzed file by dose response of a ptoed rectus muscle tension experiment. We're actually adding acetylcholine to it and seeing the responses and getting this kind of dose response curve. So you'll notice out here in the chart view we have a bunch of comments. Dose response uses a form of preset comments. They meet specific criteria. They have to be of a certain syntax. It uses those to key off of when we added a drug and then look at the region afterwards to actually analyze it with whatever method we choose. So you'll see these comments out here. We'll talk about later on in the webinar how to add these. And this is just the general chart view right here of LabChart. The place we're going to do a lot of work in dose response is the dose response table view. This is where we create our dose response preset comments and also where we record our tensions and also put the name of our drug. So we'll talk about setting this up later on. And you'll see there's a variety of things. We can get to the settings here. We can mark a dose, and we can also add a response. And we can also delete them and recalculate. So moving on, we'll drop down here to the dose response analysis view. This is a way for us to look at whatever particular analysis method we chose and see it for each dose response. So if I go through here and click on the tension in the table view, you'll see it changes to that particular dose response. And to that particular comment. And once again, we'll talk about that later here and how to set this up. Last but not least, we have our results view. Our dose response curve gets defined here. Gives us all our values, our bottom, our top, our EC50, the hill slope, etc. Goodness of fit, the R-squared value, everything that we didn't know according to the drug we applied, how it all responded and what the response is, how they reacted with each other. So that kind of takes me through the general overview of what does it look like when we're finished. And like I said, this is a bit easier to show if I go through and show you something that's already been analyzed. And you also notice that we can do a variety of runs up here in the table view. So we're not limited to just doing one. So I'm going to go ahead and close this file, and we'll go to one that has not been analyzed to kind of give an idea of how to set things up. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the table view settings, and how do we access those? You'll see here I have the table view up, which we can get to by clicking on the dose response menu and going to table view. And we can also go here to our toolbar tip or icon and go to table view here as well. We can go to the settings from a variety of locations. We can go here from the table, from the settings button down here. Or we can go to dose response, go to settings. We can also do it here from the toolbar, from the settings icon. So the first thing we're going to talk about in the dose response settings is the calculation method. There are a few that we can do here. Average is going to be the absolute average of all the data values in the calculated region. So the selection that we make or dose response makes according to the comment It'll be the absolute average of all the data values in there. Maximum is the largest absolute data value in the calculation region. So the maximum in the selection we made after our dose response comment. Minimum, just like maximum, it's going to be the smallest absolute data value in the calculation region. Max minus min, we find that max and minimum value in the selection and find the max minus min value. Integral is the sum of all the data values in the calculation region, so the area under the curve for the calculation region. We can use scientific notation for the numbers or not. We can choose the number of significant figures here. There's also a per dose baseline correction. What does this mean? By default, baseline is set at 0 for dose response. If you want the baseline to be reset for each response, then select this checkbox. And the baseline will be calculated from the position of the dose response comment marking that response. It allows you to adjust the baseline position in the analysis view. It is not available for the max minus min selection. Just kind of little gee whiz information there. You can also tell LabChart what to do here in the dose response module after we mark or add a dose, where it needs to advance to. Should it go down to the next dose, or should it go across to the next channel? So should it move down, or should it go across? And we'll talk about that later on when we start adding things to the table view. It'll be a little bit clearer there. I'd also like to mention here the little LabChart help button. You'll see these quite often in our settings windows. This will take you directly to the dose response help menu topic, and actually the specific one for the dose response settings. Like I said, they're scattered throughout. Don't be afraid to use them. They're a great resource, and we try to put them there. So if you forget a little bit something we talked about today, you can just click on this, and it'll take you to our help menu topic, which is quite good both for LabChart and also for the dose response module. So that's great, but how do we do this? How do we enter things into this table view? So to set up the preset comments that dose response needs to trigger off of, we go ahead and enter our dose concentrations here. So I'm just clicking here and entering in a few values. Sorry here, I'm going to go a little quiet while I'm doing this. So I've entered in my concentrations. For my run number 1, I'm going to enter actually the drug that I'm applying here, which is norepinephrine. And that's how we would set up the table view and enable our comments to be added. So how do I add comments from this table view now? I would go here, find the region, and I can do this in real time as well. I'm doing this post-analysis, but if I'm recording, I can also mark doses as well. So I go out here, drop my cursor out here, or if LabChart is running, it will drop it on the most recent sample. I want to add it for this run, and you'll see here, if you watch the mark dose button up here, if I'm not on the specific column for this run, it's not going to be enabled. LabChart needs to know, okay, what column do I need to put this in? So if I left click here, I'm ready to mark the dose, and if we're recording, exact same process. I hit mark dose, and it's marked. Okay, we applied it here. I go move it up again, mark dose, and you see LabChart is moving down to the next dose, and that relates to the setting here, after mark add advance down to next dose. If I was applying another drug at this point with the same concentration, I could have it move across to the next channel. But for us, we're only adding one drug for the specific file. It's best just to move down. Mark dose, mark dose, mark dose, and last but not least, we mark the dose here as well. And that's how we would go through and mark. Now, we haven't done any sort of analysis here. There's a few ways to do this. I'm going to move to a different file to do that. But this is how we would go through. At the end of your experiment, this is what you should see. If I'm doing it real time, all I have to do is make sure that I've marked the dose for my particular applications of drug. What does that look like? I'm going to go ahead and close this file. And here's what it looks like if I've done a couple runs of drugs. I have my response here, and I have my response here. There's two ways to link these doses to the actual response. The first one is I can actually highlight regions manually at the end, and you'll see that when I highlight, watch the Add Response button down here, that when I highlight after a particular dose, it gives me the option to add a response. I add response, we get our tension according to, I believe we have it set to find the maximum in that region. Go after my next dose over the region that I want to have analyzed, add response, and I can move through the file and do that the whole way through. And you can see here we're building our dose response curve as we move through in real time. Obviously, this isn't the most accurate way. I'm going through here, and it's actually could be a little tedious if we manually add like this. We want to look at specific regions. We want to make sure we make the same selection for the same distance from when we added the drug. You can actually, this process can be automated via the dose response module. And the way we would do that, if we go to the dose response menu, you can see we have the table, analysis, and results view. There's an auto-analyze selection option. How does that work? I'll go here to our other drug application. If I make a selection, and go here to dose response, I can also, if memory serves, I might be incorrect, I am. Go to dose response, drop-down menu, auto-analyze selection, and we can tell lab chart where to look. I want to look in channel 1, tension. What is my analysis time range? You were telling lab chart, okay, I'll find the comment, how far forward do I want to go, and how large of a selection do I want to make? So for our particular file, I'm just going to use 100 seconds after each dose comment, and I will stop the analysis 120 seconds after each dose comment. So a selection of 20 seconds, 100 seconds after the dose comment. We just have to instruct lab chart what to do specifically. This is not set in stone here. You can change this to whatever you'd like. As long as I've made the selection, I hit analyze. Lab chart automatically goes through and analyzes these selections and adds them. And we get our dose response curve populated. You can see here, down in the analysis view, as I click on each tension result for each dose, this view changes to that particular analysis, and lab chart is also synced. We show the selection where it was made, And we also show the point where it is used to calculate the dose response curve. If we want to change the analysis, like for instance I went to settings, I just went to average, lab chart is changed to average now. You can go to minimum, dose response curve is recalculated, and lab chart goes through here. Let's make this a little bit bigger for us to go to. We can go back to settings, just to kind of show you the differences. Max minus min, we get max minus min values where it's being determined. Here's the minimum, here's the maximum. We're getting the difference of that, and it's being plotted against this. And last but not least, integral is what it'll look like here. Area under the curve for the selection. Now if I had gone in here and checked per dose baseline correction, and I hit OK, we're changing where this integral is being applied. We're actually giving it a lower bound, and I can change that if I want to for each response. Or I could go back to settings and say, no, I want it to go to 0. Of course, just like out in lab chart, we have auto scale options that we can choose, scaling, all the controls that are available out to you in lab chart are available here in the dose response results and in the analysis view as well for each result. So that's how you would go through and use dose response. Like I said, it's available both online and offline. So you can add comments while you are actually recording the data and applying concentrations to your particular tissue. So you might be saying to yourself, that's great. If I started from scratch, everything would work out great, but I have a bunch of files that don't have comments actually in the dose response format. We realize this, that you can have previous files. Maybe you did purchase dose response at a later time after you bought lab chart, but you have a bunch of files that don't show, they don't have comment text in the dose response format. So we provide a convert comments option, and the way that'll work, for this particular file, we have a bunch in here that don't apply, so I'm going to go ahead and make a selection across all of them. Go to dose response, convert comments. Lab chart's going to look here. In channel 1, we can tell it whatever channel we want to, and also tell it where to output them as well. Unconverted comments, so say we do have something that's drug and concentration, but like I said, it's not in that dose response comment format. It'll look and it'll find them. It'll go through here and say, okay, this is what I'm going to convert it to. Is that okay? Do we want to add this one? Do we not? So if you add dose response accidentally picks up a comment that doesn't mean anything to our experiment, say we have a Krebs wash or a Krebs solution or a wash that gets picked up, you can actually go in here and remove it. If it doesn't pick up one, you can add it as well and actually set the label and dose correctly. Everything looks pretty good here with this file, what dose response is doing. So I'm going to go ahead and hit convert. Dose response goes through and converts these to the proper format and identifies them as being marked. So from this point forward, we'd actually go to auto-analyze selection, tension, for our specific selection, auto-analyze. and we've actually analyzed the selection or the specific region that we want after the drug has been added. We can recalculate here if we think something's off and we go through and change the selections. So for instance, if I go back and actually change things, I can go ahead and recalculate the table view if I want to. I can also, under the dose response menu, export my results as a spreadsheet, or as a PRISM file, excuse me, or I can send it out just as a straight text file, tab delimited. So if you want to move it to another software to do more in-depth statistical analysis like PRISM, you definitely have that option here in dose response. So this is a rather quick webinar. I know I moved through here fairly fast. So that's everything I wanted to cover today, so we'll go ahead and move on to any questions that may be out there.